"Ugh, you smell like wet poverty," she said, just before shoving the old woman into the pool. Laughter erupted. Her champagne sparkled. And for a moment, the world obeyed her beauty. She didn't know the woman she humiliated was the gatekeeper of everything she bragged about. She didn't know the pool that soaked that old dress would later drown her entire future. Before we continue, like, share, and subscribe if you believe class isn't worn, it's shown. Now let's dive into the story. Sienna lounged beneath a wide white parasol, her legs crossed perfectly over one another, a diamond anklet catching the midday sun. She sipped fresh-pressed juice from a crystal tumbler like it was a royal chalice, her polished nails gleaming against the glass. Around her, the estate bloomed. Lush hedges, marble statues, a shimmering blue pool stretching like her private moat. To anyone watching, she looked like a queen. And she acted like one. She had arrived in Lucas Moreau's life 2 years ago, stunning, ambitious, and always camera-ready. The billionaire heir had fallen fast. While Lucas traveled and worked on deals across the globe, Sienna had taken full advantage of the perks. Private chefs, chauffeurs, designer clothes. She didn't just enjoy the luxury, she claimed it. "Make sure the towels are Egyptian cotton this time," she snapped at a house staff member. Last week's felt like hotel napkins. The staff nodded silently, used to her venom disguised as charm. She wore a silk cover-up over a plunging designer swimsuit, her gold heels resting by the pool chair. Influencers often commented under her posts, #LifeGoals, Queen Energy, Lucas is lucky. But those who lived under her rule, the help, the gardeners, even the estate manager, knew better. She rarely smiled unless someone richer was watching. She never thanked anyone unless there were cameras. And she never, ever acknowledged people who didn't match her filtered idea of high class. Lucas? He saw what he wanted to see, beauty on his arm, sophistication in social settings. He never noticed the cold silences Sienna gave to others. Or maybe he did, and just didn't care. Sienna adjusted her sunglasses and glanced around the pool with a satisfied smirk. "This is my palace," she whispered under her breath. And in that moment, head high, lips glossed, completely unaware, she truly believed it. She didn't know that today, something was about to change. Not with thunder or fury, but with footsteps. Soft, slow, and very, very intentional. The quiet shuffle of worn shoes went unnoticed at first. A soft creak of the iron gate. The gentle rhythm of sandals against stone tiles. Sienna didn't flinch. She was too busy adjusting her phone's camera angle for the perfect selfie. The sun hit her cheekbones just right, the glitter of the pool behind her casting a luxurious backdrop. 1,000 followers were waiting to see how rich her Saturday looked. Then, movement. In her peripheral vision, she caught sight of someone easing down onto the cushioned bench beside her lounge chair. She turned, irritated. And there she was. An old woman. Gray hair tied back into a frizzy bun. Her skin, sun-kissed and lined with decades. She wore a simple cotton dress and a soft shawl over her shoulders, as if she'd wandered in from a time Sienna had long forgotten. The woman didn't say a word. She simply sat, hands folded on her lap, eyes closed, face turned toward the sun like it was an old friend. Sienna stared at her, stunned. "Excuse me," she said sharply, lowering her sunglasses. "Who invited you to sit here?" No answer. The woman opened her eyes slowly and gave a faint smile. Not of apology, not of weakness, just calm. Sienna scoffed. "This area is for residents and guests. Not." She waved a hand. "Gardeners, grandmothers." Still, the woman remained seated. Sienna glanced around. No staff. No Lucas. No witnesses. Her irritation curdled into something darker. The woman's presence, so still, so out of place, felt like a personal insult to her curated world. As if this quiet nobody had dared to exist in her frame. She leaned forward, her voice low and sharp. "You must be lost, ma'am. The help quarters are on the other side." The woman turned to her and, without blinking, said in a voice both soft and steady, "I go where I'm welcome, and where I belong." Sienna blinked. And for a brief second, something flickered in her. Not fear, not respect, but confusion. Still, pride doesn't pause. And entitlement doesn't ask questions. What Sienna did next would echo far louder than she ever expected. The moment Lucas's friends arrived, Sienna's performance began. They poured in through the side patio, Men in pressed linen shirts, women in glossy bikinis and oversized sunglasses, all clinking glasses and tossing compliments like confetti. Sienna, you're glowing. This estate is straight out of a movie. Sienna smiled wide, the kind of smile that held no warmth, only power. She posed, laughed, and made sure everyone saw her in the best light. But the old woman still sat there, still quiet, still ruining the picture. She whispered to her friend Maya, "Can you believe she's still here?" Maya, half drunk on mimosas and shallowness, sneered, "Who even let her in?" The pool water shimmered beside them like liquid glass. Music thumped softly in the background. And then, as if possessed by the arrogance of applause, Sienna stood. She didn't yell. She didn't warn. She just turned, placed her perfectly manicured hand on the old woman's shoulder, and shoved. The splash broke the moment. Gasps echoed across the deck. The old woman's frail body hit the water, clothes and shawl soaking instantly. She didn't scream. She simply fell, like someone who had fallen before. Silence. Then Sienna burst out laughing. Maya joined in, clapping. That'll teach her to sit next to royalty. Others chuckled nervously, unsure of what they'd just witnessed. The staff at the far end of the estate froze, unsure whether to run forward or pretend they hadn't seen it at all. The old woman surfaced slowly, pushing her drenched hair back with dignity. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just looked up at Sienna and smiled, a soft, knowing smile that sent a chill through the air warmer than the sun. Sienna rolled her eyes and turned away, arms crossed. Maybe next time she'll stay in her lane. But deep inside her, something shifted. That smile had unsettled her. It didn't look broken. It didn't look embarrassed. It looked patient, almost amused, as if the woman wasn't hurt, but waiting, and not just to dry off. The water rippled gently as the old woman was helped out of the pool by one of the estate's gardeners. Her soaked shawl clung to her frail frame, and her gray hair dripped in strands across her forehead. Yet, she didn't shiver. She didn't shout. She didn't shed a tear. She stood upright, water streaming from her long skirt, her dignity untouched by the laughter that still lingered weakly among the guests. The gardener, trembling, offered her a towel. She took it silently, patting her face as if she'd just come from a midday stroll, not been shoved like trash by a spoiled child. Sienna leaned back with a smug smirk. "Next time, she'll think twice," she whispered to Maya. But the moment the old woman turned toward her, silence fell again. That gaze. It wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was the kind of look that came from someone who had seen more in one lifetime than Sienna could imagine. A look that weighed her, and found her embarrassingly light. The old woman didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her eyes moved from Sienna, to Maya, to every guest who had watched and done nothing. And then she turned. Her wet shoes squished as she walked past the cabanas, down the stone path, and toward the rear entrance of the estate. Not the guest gate, but the private one. One of the waiters opened it for her without hesitation. Sienna frowned. "Why'd he do that?" she muttered. Maya glanced at her. Maybe he felt sorry, but even she didn't sound convinced. The laughter had stopped. No one was clapping anymore. The music played on in the background, but the energy had shifted, like the moment before a storm hits. Sienna scoffed and poured herself another drink, trying to ignore the awkward glances. "She probably sneaked in," she said, more to herself than anyone else. Desperate old bat. But something about that woman's silence haunted her more than 1,000 insults would have. It wasn't the fall that unsettled her. It was the way the woman rose. Like she'd been pushed before. Like she'd survived worse. Like she'd already forgiven her. And that made her dangerous. The growl of a sleek black Aston Martin pulling into the circular driveway broke the awkward hush that still hovered over the estate. Heads turned. Some whispered. But Sienna perked up instantly, her glossy lips curling into a smile. "Finally," she breathed, smoothing her hair and rising to meet him. Lucas stepped out of the car, still dressed in a sharp navy blazer from his board meeting, his face unreadable. The butler rushed to greet him, but Lucas ignored everyone, eyes scanning the gathering. "Where's my mother?" he asked flatly. Sienna froze. Her smile flickered. The guests looked at each other, unsure who would speak. She left through the side gate," someone finally muttered. Lucas's expression darkened. He turned slowly to Sienna, jaw clenched. "What happened here?" Sienna forced a laugh, brushing invisible lint from her dress. "Oh, that?" she said lightly. Some random old lady tried to act like she belonged here. Sat beside me like we were equals. She tossed her hair. So I taught her a little lesson in pool etiquette. Lucas blinked. A random old lady? Yes, babe, she said sweetly, placing a hand on his arm. She was weird. Probably one of the staff's relatives. She didn't even belong here. Lucas stepped back, his face now thunderous. That random old lady, he said slowly, is my mother. The entire backyard went silent. Sienna's hand dropped. What? She whispered. You shoved my mother into the pool, Lucas continued, his voice rising. In front of all these people? For sitting next to you? Wait, I didn't know, Sienna stammered, panic seeping in. She looked so plain. She didn't introduce herself. She doesn't need to, he snapped. This is her estate. Her property. The place she designed herself. And she chose to dress simply today because she likes to see people's true colors. Sienna's mouth hung open. Lucas shook his head in disbelief. And you failed the test in front of everyone. Lucas, please. I didn't know. But you didn't care to ask either, he said coldly. You humiliated her. Laughed. Mocked her. Sienna's legs felt weak. Where is she now? He asked the staff. Gone back to the inner villa, sir, one of the guards replied. Lucas turned toward the house without another glance at Sienna. Lucas, she called after him, voice cracking. But he didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. Lucas stood at the edge of the sunlit patio, hands clenched by his sides, the same pool glimmering mockingly behind him, the one his mother had just been pushed into. Sienna followed him, heels clacking in desperate rhythm. Lucas, wait, she pleaded, catching up to him. You're being dramatic. I already said I didn't know she was your mother. He turned slowly, his voice low but sharp. Sienna, let me ask you something. His eyes pinned hers. Who exactly did you think that woman was? She rolled her eyes, brushing it off with a scoff. Some nosy old crasher. Probably a retired nanny or gardener's wife who wanted to mingle with the rich. Lucas blinked in disbelief. That's what you assumed? Without a word of greeting or respect. I mean, look at how she dressed. Sienna protested, growing defensive. Worn-out sandals, faded scarf, thrift store blouse. If she wanted to be taken seriously, she shouldn't have looked like a forgotten maid. Lucas's jaw tightened. He stepped closer. That woman, he said, each word slow and cutting, has more class in the wrinkle of her hands than you do in your entire designer wardrobe. Sienna's breath caught. Lucas. She's the co-founder of my family's real estate empire. My father's partner, my mentor, and the woman who literally built this estate with her bare hands when I was a boy. Every marble tile, every arch, every piece of art you pose with, she picked them, paid for them, oversaw their installation. Sienna paled. He wasn't done. She dresses simply because she values substance over style. She doesn't announce her wealth. She lets legacy speak for her. He paused. And today, she came to observe quietly, to see the woman her son was serious about. Sienna's lips trembled. Lucas, please, how was I supposed to know all that? He didn't blink. You weren't supposed to know. You were just supposed to be kind. Sienna swallowed hard. For once, her beauty couldn't shield her. The glitter of her earrings felt heavy, useless. Lucas looked away for a moment, as if trying to calm the storm behind his eyes. When he looked back, his voice was even colder. She's not just my mother. She's the majority shareholder of the Lucas Group. And after what she witnessed today, he shook his head. I don't think this relationship, or your presence in our world, will survive the hour. Sienna stood frozen. The truth had surfaced, and it was deeper than any pool she could have ever imagined. Years earlier, in a private suite overlooking the hills of the Greystone estate, a younger Lucas sat across from his mother, Evelyn Hawthorne. Her silver hair was already starting to show through her natural brunette, but her posture remained straight, regal, a woman who had built empires with grit instead of noise. Son, she said, sipping her tea, you'll one day be surrounded by people who smile when you're around but sneer when you turn. The only thing louder than wealth is the silence that follows character. Lucas leaned forward. Is that why you never go out in designer gowns like the others? Evelyn smiled. I could wear silk. But silk never taught me who was real. Denim did. He laughed. You're something else, Mom. I'm something this world often misunderstands, she replied. And I intend to keep it that way. That's why, whenever someone new comes close to you, I test them. Quietly. No titles. No guards. Just me. Old, wrinkled, and invisible to the arrogant. Lucas raised a brow. You test them? She nodded. People forget kindness when they believe you hold nothing. And the ones who fail don't deserve a seat at your table, no matter how dazzling they look in the light. It was that principle that led Evelyn to walk alone into the poolside that morning. She had heard enough whispers about Sienna, her beauty, her charm, her influence online. The tabloids called her the future Mrs. Lucas Hawthorne. Evelyn called her unvetted. So, dressed in a plain cream blouse, loose linen trousers, and sandals faded by time, Evelyn entered the estate unannounced. The guards knew better than to stop her. No one did. She walked past luxury cars, ignored the murmurs of overdressed guests, and took a seat quietly beside the glittering girl at the pool. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She simply waited to be seen, to be acknowledged. But instead, she was shoved, mocked, laughed at, and left dripping with chlorinated water while cameras kept rolling. Back in the present, Lucas stood alone in the mansion's hallway, staring at an old photo framed on the wall. It showed Evelyn, 20 years younger, standing beside his father as they broke ground on the estate. Her hands were calloused, her eyes focused. There was no jewelry on her wrist, only a blueprint rolled in one hand and a shovel in the other. She never needed to prove her power. She designed it. And now, once again, her test had done its job. Sienna, the self-proclaimed queen of the estate, had just failed it, spectacularly. Sienna stood by the marble column, arms crossed tightly against her chest, her designer sunglasses now pushed up like a useless crown atop her head. Her voice had fallen silent since Lucas revealed who the old woman truly was. Lucas didn't yell. He didn't need to. His silence pressed against her like a wall, heavier than all the shouts she'd ever endured in her life. He finally broke it. You really thought you were just embarrassing an old nobody? His voice was calm but cold. Sienna folded her arms tighter. How was I supposed to know? She walked in like a cleaner or something. No one said anything. Lucas tilted his head, almost in disbelief. Exactly. And you never bothered to ask. She shifted. Wait, you're seriously saying that was your mom? Dressed like that? Lucas nodded slowly. Yes, Sienna. That woman you shoved into the pool. That woman you mocked in front of everyone. That's Evelyn Hawthorne. My mother. The real owner of this estate. Sienna's jaw trembled slightly. I thought you said you owned this place. He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. Just a bitterness she had never seen before. I live here, but I don't own it. Not yet. He walked over to a glass cabinet by the wall, pulled out a folder, and handed it to her. Go ahead. Read it. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside were documents, shareholding certificates, land ownership records, company ledgers. The same name appeared over and over again. Evelyn A. Hawthorne. Majority shareholder. Chairwoman. Founder. You're joking, she whispered, blinking. Lucas stepped back. No. She started with a single apartment building when she was 30. She worked 3 jobs to fund it. Over the next 3 decades, she built Hawthorne Estates into what it is now. The pools, the towers, the luxury clubs, the investment firm, every bit of it. Sienna's lips parted, speechless. She owns 65% of the entire empire, he added. I have a stake, yes. I'm her son, but I haven't earned what she's earned. I don't inherit anything I can't handle with humility. Sienna looked down at the papers again. Her hands were trembling now. And that's why, Lucas continued, she comes to events looking like anyone else. Because she wants to see if people respect presence without prestige, if they can treat a person like a human without being told who they are. Sienna swallowed. Lucas, I didn't know. He cut her off, voice sharper now. That's the problem. You didn't care to know. You didn't ask. You didn't pause. You looked at her and saw someone unworthy of your space. And you made her feel it, in front of everyone. Silence settled like dust. I brought you here to see if you'd fit into my life, Lucas said, stepping back. But today, you proved you'd ruin everything my mother built. He turned, walking toward the entrance. Sienna stood frozen, papers still in hand, but no crown could save her now. Lucas, wait. Sienna's voice cracked as she stumbled after him, still clutching the papers like a lifeline unraveling in her hands. Her heels clicked rapidly against the tile, echoing down the luxurious hall that now felt like a prison corridor. He didn't turn back. Please, she pleaded, her voice suddenly softer, desperate. I didn't mean to insult her. I didn't know who she was. Lucas stopped at the door, his hand on the brass handle. Without looking at her, he replied, "You didn't need to know who she was to show basic decency." Tears welled in Sienna's eyes. Her confidence, her poise, her polished beauty, all wilted in the weight of humiliation. I'll apologize. Right now? Where is she? Please, let me just explain. She doesn't need your explanation, Lucas said, finally turning around. His face was unreadable, a cold mask of disappointment. And she doesn't owe you forgiveness. But I love you, Sienna blurted. You know I do. Lucas tilted his head. Do you? Or did you love the lifestyle? The mansion? The spotlight that came with being seen next to me? Sienna's lip quivered. That's not fair. No, he said sharply. What's not fair is pushing a woman into a pool because she sat beside you. What's not fair is treating human beings like dirt unless they sparkle. She reached for his arm. Just give me a chance to fix it. He gently pulled his arm away, then pressed a button on the panel beside the door. A soft beep followed. Within seconds, two uniformed security personnel approached from the side hallway, firm, neutral expressions on their faces. Sienna's eyes widened. What are they doing here? They'll escort you out, Lucas said simply. And make sure you don't return. Her breath hitched. You're kicking me out? Lucas didn't respond. He didn't need to. The guard stepped forward. Sienna took a step back. No, this isn't happening. Lucas, please. But his eyes were already distant. The kind of distance that isn't just physical, but permanent. You should go now, he said. One of the guards gently gestured toward the grand double doors. Sienna hesitated, heart pounding, throat burning. This was supposed to be my life, she whispered bitterly, mascara streaking her face. I was going to be your wife. Lucas didn't flinch. My wife would never push my mother into a pool. The silence said the rest. With trembling pride, Sienna adjusted her jacket, lifted her chin, and walked, heels echoing like thunder now, between the two guards toward the exit. She didn't look back. The doors closed behind her with a final, echoing thud. Inside, Lucas remained standing, still as a statue, grief swimming in his chest, but certainty anchoring his choice. And outside, beneath the mansion's golden pillars, Sienna stood on the driveway she once bragged about, surrounded by flashing cameras, whispers, and judgment. But none of it mattered now, because the woman who once walked like a queen had just been exiled by the truth she never saw coming. It started with a blurry snapshot. A single photo uploaded anonymously. The moment Sienna shoved the old woman into the pool, her hand mid-push, her face twisted in a cruel laugh. The image was grainy, but unmistakable. Then came the video. Captured by a guest's phone, it showed everything. The laughter, the mockery, the splash, the silence that followed. Within hours, it was everywhere. Heartless heiress bullies old woman at poolside party. Beauty without grace. Viral video sparks outrage. Hashtag cancel Sienna trended in 6 countries. In a matter of hours, Sienna's online persona, once glowing with glamour, red carpets, and product sponsorships, began to unravel like cheap thread. Her comment sections, once filled with fire emojis and admiration, turned into battlegrounds of disgust and fury. She pushed an old woman like she was swatting a fly. Disgusting. Imagine being that rich and still that mean. Who raised this creature? Brand partnerships scrambled to distance themselves. Press releases flew out like smoke signals. Glowlux Cosmetics. We do not condone bullying or violence in any form. Effective immediately, we are terminating all collaborations with Ms. Sienna Vale. NovaWear. Our brand stands for women's empowerment and dignity. Ms. Vale's actions do not reflect our values. The mansion gates, once lined with paparazzi hoping for a glimpse of fashion, now saw protesters holding signs. Kindness over clout. No crown for a cruel queen. Justice for the pushed woman. But Sienna? She was nowhere to be seen. Locked away in a rented hotel suite. Lights off, blinds drawn. She scrolled endlessly through the destruction she had caused. Every news anchor's voice sounded the same, stern, disapproving. Every influencer she once posed with now posted vague disassociation, messages, and quiet unfollows. Even the luxury spa where she'd filmed dozens of skincare reels had posted a subtle statement. We value kindness above all else. She tossed her phone on the bed, her fingers trembling. This can't be happening. But it was. And worse, no one was coming to save her. Lucas didn't call. Her agent stopped responding. Her management quietly dropped her name from their client roster. The world she built with filters and designer shoes was collapsing, and the dust was her own doing. She clutched her head as the video replayed again on TV, slow motion this time. The splash. The silence. The smile. Sienna screamed and threw the remote. It shattered against the wall. But there was no one to blame now. Because for the first time in her perfectly curated life, the world saw the unfiltered version of her. And they weren't applauding. Sienna woke up to a flashing screen. Her phone had nearly exploded with notifications, but not the kind she was used to. This time, they weren't likes. They were reports. Tags. Public draggings. Her Instagram, once pristine with filtered selfies, designer outfits, and tropical backdrops, now looked like a battlefield. Reported for bullying. You're a disgrace to women. How dare you laugh after hurting that woman? We used to look up to you, shame on you. She scrolled faster, eyes wide, mouth dry. Overnight, her follower count had dropped by nearly 70,000. And it wasn't just the public, it was the brands. The first email came from Velour Vogue, her most lucrative endorsement. Subject, termination of contract. Dear Ms. Vale, following recent developments in the viral incident, we have no choice but to terminate our agreement, effective immediately. Please remove all Velour Vogue-related content within 48 hours to avoid legal action. She gasped and opened her DMs. Several influencers she had mentored had unfollowed her. Some even posted cryptic quotes about watching the mighty fall with grace. Then came the message from Crystal Lease Jewels, the diamond brand she had just launched a campaign with. This is a formal notice. All promotional materials featuring your likeness will be withdrawn from our platforms. We will not be renewing our contract. Kindly refrain from using our brand in any future posts. Her hands shook as she opened TikTok, one of her main platforms. Gone. Banned for violation of community guidelines. She jumped from the bed and threw on a robe, rushing to the mirror. No, this can't be real, she whispered. She pulled up Twitter. Another mistake. Hashtag Sienna cancelled. Hashtag push to oblivion. Hashtag not my influencer. Even memes had started to appear, cruel ones. One showed her face with the caption, "She pushed an old woman into the pool. Now her career is drowning too." Fashion bloggers she once ignored were now gleefully dissecting her fall. Sienna Vale taught us one thing. Pretty faces don't cover ugly hearts. Why your brand should always check the soul, not just the smile. Within hours, she received a final blow. Her agency dropped her. An email. No call. No chance. Due to irreparable reputational damage, we are ending our professional relationship with Ms. Vale. All pending deals are canceled. We wish her well. She slumped to the floor, the walls of her luxurious suite suddenly feeling like a cage. The designer bags scattered around her, gifts from brands now gone, looked useless now, deadweight. Her entire world had revolved around beauty, access, and status. But none of that could shield her from this moment. She had built a career on image. And with one cruel act, it shattered. She crawled to her laptop, trying to log into her main platform account, Instagram. She entered the password. Your account has been temporarily suspended for investigation. Tears welled up in her eyes. No, I can fix this. But the internet had already made up its mind. The girl who laughed while an old woman drowned in shame was now watching her empire drown with her. By the end of the week, Sienna Vale's name had become a warning, not a brand. The once flattering buzz that followed her through velvet rope events, after parties, and high society galas had gone quiet. Even her publicist had stopped taking her calls. Her inbox, once brimming with VIP invitations, press features, and collaboration offers, now echoed with silence. And when she did finally get a notification, it was another rejection. Due to recent events, we are unable to accommodate your attendance at the Manhattan Gold Gala. We hope you understand. Event coordinator, Luminera PR. She stared at the message, stunned. The Manhattan Gold Gala had been her playground the last 3 years. Last year, she was even on the front page of Vogue's event highlights, titled Sienna Vale, a new standard of glamour. Now, her name wasn't even whispered. She checked her calendar. A red mark struck through the exclusive Paris Runway Week slot. Her modeling agency had quietly removed her from the lineup. Her hands trembled as she opened the modeling roster sent to casting directors. She wasn't on it. There was no call, no warning, just erased. And then it hit her. The contract. She scrambled to her documents folder, opened the PDF from Icon Models International, her crown jewel contract that launched her global campaigns. Scrolling fast, she reached the last page. A line highlighted in red. Clause 7. Breach of public conduct. Any act of public disrespect, violence, or reputational harm is grounds for immediate termination. Attached was a letter. Dear Ms. Vale, we regret to inform you that your contract has been terminated effective immediately. We take brand reputation seriously, and recent footage circulating publicly does not reflect our values. We wish you the best in your personal growth. That was it. Just like that. No goodbye. No apology accepted. Her face, the one that had graced magazines, bus stops, beauty campaigns, was now radioactive. She scrolled through her social feed, hoping for some support. But it was worse. Influencers had unfollowed her. Celebrities she once posed with had distanced themselves. Brands had untagged her photos. One ex-friend posted a story. Real beauty doesn't shove elders. Just saying. Even followers who once adored her had vanished. Her follower count was in free fall. 3 million had become 1.4. And it kept dropping every time she refreshed. In desperation, she messaged her manager, Dana, the woman who helped her sign her first runway deal. Dana, please. We need to do damage control. I can apologize publicly. No reply. 2 ticks. But no reply. She tossed the phone across the bed and sat at the edge in her silk robe, looking at the awards, trophies, and plaques hanging on her wall. None of them spoke now. None of them defended her. She wasn't the girl with the glow anymore. She was the girl who got caught, laughing at cruelty. And in a world that loved beauty, she had made herself ugly. One thought kept echoing in her mind. All this, because I couldn't stand an old woman sitting next to me? The loss wasn't just of invites, followers, or campaigns. It was the loss of the mirror she once admired herself in. And this time, the reflection didn't smile back. The room was quiet except for the gentle hum of conversation and the occasional clatter of serving spoons against warm trays. At the heart of it all stood a woman in a simple beige blouse and slacks, sleeves rolled, apron tied, silver hair tucked behind her ears. No cameras, no designer labels, no spotlight. And yet, everyone looked to her like she was royalty. Mrs. Eleanor Westbrook, known to the media simply as the woman in the viral pool video, had become something else entirely to the women gathered at the Harbor Grace shelter. She wasn't a billionaire's mother here. She was just Ellie, the woman who listened without judgment, the one who made time, who made space. On Tuesdays, she served food. On Thursdays, she led therapy circles. And every morning, she watered the garden out back, a project she started to help the women find peace. Ms. Ellie, one young woman said, her voice timid. How do you stay so calm after everything? Eleanor smiled, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Because storms don't sink you when you learn how to float. And I've had years of practice. They all laughed. Not because it was funny, but because they knew it was true. The viral video of her being pushed into a pool had been dissected, shared, mocked, and memed across every corner of the internet. But she never once addressed it publicly. She didn't need to. Her life, her grace, had answered every question the world wanted to ask. And it didn't take long for others to follow her lead. Local journalists who once wrote clickbait headlines returned to interview her, not for gossip, but for insight. Why did you choose to stay silent, Mrs. Westbrook? One asked during a brief community forum. Her reply was simple. Because silence sometimes speaks louder than defense. And because dignity doesn't argue with noise. The women at the shelter adored her not for her name, but for her presence. She remembered birthdays. She remembered who liked chamomile over mint. She spoke less and listened more. And every now and then, when someone broke down crying or doubted their worth, Eleanor would lean in and say softly, "You're more than the moment that tried to drown you." She had once been humiliated in front of the world, but now, she stood as proof that wisdom floats. And those who knew her didn't see a woman thrown into water. They saw a woman who rose from it, stronger, calmer, and untouchable. Lucas stepped quietly through the doors of the Harbor Grace shelter, hands in his pockets, head slightly bowed. The clamor of the outside world faded the moment he entered, replaced by soft laughter, the shuffle of chairs, and the warm aroma of homemade stew. It was peaceful, humbling. He hadn't been here in years. A volunteer noticed him and smiled. Looking for Miss Ellie? He nodded. Yes, I'm her son. The woman's eyes softened with recognition. She's in the garden. Lucas followed the path out back, past worn benches and blooming jasmine, until he saw her, kneeling by a flower bed, gently pressing fresh soil around the roots of a small plant. His heart ached at the sight. No mansion, no boardroom, just his mother, hands dirty, eyes kind, tending to life like it still needed her help. Mom, he said softly. She looked up, wiping sweat from her brow, and smiled. That same smile that had comforted him since childhood. Lucas, she said, standing. Didn't expect you today. I had to come, he replied, walking closer. I just needed to say thank you. She tilted her head. For what, darling? He swallowed hard. For never playing their game. For letting people underestimate you. For seeing people, not performances. You always saw through the masks, even when I wore one. Eleanor studied her son with gentle eyes. You chose love once. But then you traded it for appearances. I know, he said, voice thick with guilt. And I watched someone I thought I loved become someone I didn't recognize. You saw it before I did. She nodded, not in judgment, but in understanding. You don't have to explain, she said. Sometimes it takes a fall to see who was steady all along. Lucas sighed. I let her insult you, humiliate you, and you never once lashed out. I didn't need to, Eleanor said, turning back to her plants. The world has its way of revealing character. The truth always surfaces, like oil on water. Lucas knelt beside her, helping dig a small hole for the next flower. I'm going to be better. Not just for business. For people. For you. She smiled. Then plant this one for me. He took the small blossom from her hand and placed it in the earth, pressing the soil firmly around it. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Lucas sat with his mother, not as an heir or CEO, but simply as a son rediscovering what legacy truly meant. Not money, not status, but character. Sienna shuffled down the crowded street, head low, dark glasses pulled over tired eyes. Her designer days were behind her now. No brands, no entourage, just a plain hoodie, jeans, and silence. People barely noticed her anymore, which made it worse. She used to be worshipped. Now, she was invisible. She stopped at the street corner, waiting for the light to change, when a hush of perfume and grace swept past her, subtle but captivating. A woman in a pristine cream suit glided by. Not flashy, not loud, but impossible to ignore. Sienna's breath caught. There was something eerily familiar about the woman. Her posture, her calm presence, her quiet power. No makeup masks, no loud heels, just elegance. Effortless elegance. The woman didn't look at her, didn't pause, didn't flinch, but Sienna's knees weakened. As the woman crossed the street, sunlight lit her face briefly, and that's when Sienna saw it. The cheekbones, the wise eyes, the unmistakable grace. It was her, the old woman she had pushed. Except not old at all. Refined, radiant, reborn. Eleanor. Sienna took a shaky step back, heart pounding, lips parted in disbelief. The woman she once mocked, publicly, cruelly, now looked like she belonged on the cover of a global magazine. It wasn't wealth that made her shine. It was dignity. And in that frozen moment, Sienna realized something devastating. She hadn't pushed an old woman that day. She'd pushed away everything she wished she could be. The light changed. Eleanor walked on. And Sienna stayed. Alone. Invisible. And drowning in the echo of her own reflection. The motel pool barely rippled. No music. No laughter. Just the faint hum of an air conditioner struggling against the heat. Sienna sat in a plastic chair with peeling paint, legs crossed, a lukewarm soda can dripping condensation beside her. Her once glamorous phone, now cracked at the corner, flickered as she scrolled. Photo after photo. Red carpet. Yacht brunches. Luxury spas. All of them frozen smiles and staged glamour. Once upon a time, people begged to be near her. Now, she couldn't even book a modeling gig for an online boutique. Her inbox was quiet. Her followers were gone. Her brand deals? Terminated. She glanced at the pool. This one didn't sparkle like the estate's infinity pool once did. There were no waiters with champagne trays. No string lights reflecting elegance. Just a chipped cement border, and 2 faded pool floats. And suddenly, her laughter from that day echoed in her mind. Cruel, proud, unbothered. The moment she shoved that nobody into the water. That was the turning point. She'd thought she was untouchable. She hadn't just pushed someone into a pool. She'd pushed away compassion, humility, and the very ladder she'd climbed to get to the top. Now, she couldn't even remember what real success felt like. Her thumb hovered over one old post, a photo with Lucas. He was smiling. So was she. But now she could see it. The fakeness, the fear, and the facade. She tapped the delete button. A notification popped up. Are you sure you want to delete this memory? She hesitated, then pressed yes. Not because she was ready to heal, but because it hurt too much to see what she lost. The pool beside her remained still. Not even her own reflection looked back. In a city where money sparkled louder than kindness, and luxury was often mistaken for worth, there once lived a woman named Sienna, praised for her beauty, envied for her lifestyle, and feared for her pride. She didn't rise through hardship. She was handed status by love, and thought it made her royalty. But what no one told her, or what she refused to hear, was that titles without character are nothing but paper crowns. When an old woman sat beside her, quietly and without demand, Sienna saw not grace, not wisdom, not the weary footprints of experience, but an eyesore, a threat to her imagined throne, a shadow that didn't match her spotlight. And so, she laughed and pushed, right into the pool, right into the moment that would drown everything she had built on shallow ground. Because that old woman, drenched and silent, was more than what met the eye. She was the architect behind the empire, the mother of the heir, the heartbeat of the house. Where Sienna wore diamonds to feel powerful, the old woman wore humility, and it outshone them all. Sienna's apology came too late. Because apologies made from shame, not from change, hold no weight. The cameras captured it. The world reacted. The gates closed behind her. And slowly, everything faded. The followers, the endorsements, the identity she built on approval, all gone. Now, people speak of her not with awe, but with warning. They point not to her looks, but to her fall. A fall that began with one cruel shove and ended with a bitter reflection beside a motel pool. Because, in the end, the pool she thought made her superior was the one that finally showed her who she truly was. She thought the pool made her superior, but all it did was reflect the woman she truly was. Like, share, and subscribe if you believe pride makes you push others, but humility teaches you how to swim.